There is a live look at the Senate floor right now as the Senate continues the vote-a-rama on the massive Republican-backed tax bill. The legislation, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill, is the major centerpiece of President Trump's second-term agenda. Lawmakers worked late into the weekend on the bill. Senate Republicans voted Saturday night to advance the measure. All but two voted in favor of the procedural motion. The GOP faces Trump's imposed July 4th deadline to get this to his desk. But Democrats worked to slow the process down. Senate clerks completed a nearly 16 hours readout of the 940-page bill at their request. Once the bill makes it out of the Senate, it will head back to the House for final approval before it gets Trump's signature. So what's included in the bill? Some of the more controversial pieces of legislation include restrictions to Medicaid, raising the debt limit by $5 trillion, limits on overtime and tips deductions, and boost to defense funding and immigration enforcement. Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer addressed the chamber before the voting started. Take a look.
With every rewrite, Senate Republicans have made their bill more extreme, pro-billionaire, and more hostile to people's health care and livelihood. Why did they do that? There's a small group on that side of the aisle, MAGA hard right-wingers, who are dictating what's happened, and all the rest of the senators on the Republican side who know it's wrong go along. A small group. They don't represent more than 10% of the American people, but they're dictating what this body does. A, because of the rules we have, a simple majority. But B, because our colleagues on the Republican side lack the courage of their convictions to do the right thing for the American people. It's outrageous.
And Republicans fundamentally have believed that it's better if you allow the American people to keep their own money, that you distribute power out of Washington, D.C., back to state and local governments who are closer to the people and can make better decisions that are more informed by what's actually happened in their individual states. And so when we use reconciliation to keep taxes low, and by the way, that's all we are doing here is extending current tax policy. We are preventing over a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people. And when you vote against this, that's what you'd be voting for.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion is joining us now from Capitol Hill with the latest on where the vote stands right now. Nikole, happy Monday to you. I understand the vote-a-rama process has started already. So what does this look like, and what are both sides trying to ultimately accomplish?
Well, the vote-a-rama process is really part and parcel when it comes to big pieces of legislation. It's usually an opportunity for senators to offer amendments and vote on amendments to this bill, whether they are trying to improve the package or just make a statement. That really is kind of the objective of many Democrats, in that they will try to force Republicans' hands by introducing a number of amendments to try to make them take tough votes on this bill, and whether or not they're going to raise cost on working families. So they kind of want to put their backs against the wall, if you will. Republicans, for their part, obviously some didn't get everything they wanted in this big beautiful bill, so they too may be using this as an opportunity to just make some additional tweaks to the bill, whether that's to various Medicaid provisions and other parts of this package. So senators are allowed an unlimited number of amendments, so that's why this process could go on for some time.
And Nikole, the Congressional Budget Office took a closer look at the impact of this bill on the nation's debt. What did we learn there?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office is a nonpartisan entity, and when it comes to big pieces of legislation like this, they score or analyze them. And so what the CBO found is that the Senate bill in its current form could add upwards of $3.3 trillion to the federal deficit. Now, that does give some Republicans who want to cut cost and cut down on the debt and deficit, if you will, some pause. But at the same time, some of them remain a bit skeptical of the analysis. Democrats, though, are really pointing to this as yet another reason why the Senate shouldn't move forward with this bill. Furthermore, the CBO has also projected that up to 11.8 million people stand to potentially lose health care coverage if the Medicaid provisions in this package go through. So again, lawmakers use these numbers to and against their advantage, but it's certainly something that many of them are watching closely and incorporating into this ongoing debate.
Yeah, and what ultimately happens once this bill leaves the Senate? We know President Donald Trump, he has a July 4th deadline for the bill to get to his desk. Is that even realistic?
It seems fairly feasible at this point. I mean, look, both Senate and House Republican leaders have made clear that they want to deliver on the president's big, beautiful bill, and they want to get it to him on time, even though this is kind of an arbitrary deadline, if you will. The only concern some lawmakers have in terms of trying to get to this to the president sooner rather than later is they don't want to bump up against the debt limit. You mentioned that this raises the debt ceiling by about $5 trillion. In part to kind of help pay for this package. It's kind of like raising the nation's credit card limit. So the Treasury Secretary has already warned that the U.S. could hit that date at some point this summer, and certainly many lawmakers don't want to default, which could have negative repercussions for the economy. So for that reason, they want to try to meet this earlier deadline if they can. And as of now, we think the Senate could clear this package as soon as today, maybe tomorrow. The House has already been called back for votes on Wednesday.
All right, we'll wait and see what happens. Nikole Killion live from Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much for your time today. And for more information on what's in the president's budget bill, visit our website, cbsnews.com. And now I want to bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, happy Monday to you. What are you hearing from the White House about the desire to get this bill passed today and on the president's desk for signing?
Hey there, amigo. Good to be with you, and happy Monday to you as well. Over the weekend, the White House called a vote against this and not to pass it, essentially the ultimate betrayal. Remember, this is something that President Trump campaigned on. These issues, policies that will be rolled out in the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, such as no taxes on tips and overtime, or something that the president fiercely wants to fund his agenda. On top of that, you have increased spending for defense and border security, certainly something that the White House wants. And the president is really going on the attack in terms of pushing back against Republicans, of course, Democrats, we expect that, but pushing back against officials in his own party who are coming out in opposition of this bill. We know that the White House wants to make sure it gets done by July 4th. The president seemed to give a little bit of wiggle room late last week with that deadline, but over the weekend we saw the White House double down on that deadline as the president, of course, watched those initial results of that test vote, essentially, to move the legislation forward over the weekend. So the White House closely watching this here, and we anticipate the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, will touch on the issue again at that briefing that's scheduled for 1 p.m. today. Go.
And so, Willie, the president celebrated the retirement announcement of Senator Thom Tillis, who announced he would not seek re-election. Would you say this is another example of the pressure the president puts on lawmakers who challenge him?
Yeah, it certainly is. Following this announcement, I'll note that the president posted on Truth Social and essentially called the senator who is no longer seeking another term. He said he's not a doer, and in that he's even worse than Rand, quote, Fauci Paul, referring to Senator Rand Paul, who also voted against moving this big, beautiful bill forward over the weekend. We, of course, know that the president goes on the attack. He uses this as a tactic to push back against those who threaten his agenda, who push back against him. We know, of course, that oftentimes he used the threat of supporting a primary challenger, and that's in fact what would have happened in this case had Tillis not decided to run for another term. Of course, the senator essentially said that this situation around the big, beautiful bill wasn't necessarily the reason, Trump wasn't necessarily the reason why he decided to eventually step step away from politics. But I'll point out, just about a week or so ago, the president targeted Thomas Massie, a congressman from Kentucky, who pitched a bill in the House to essentially rein in those war powers in terms of that attack against Iran, seeking that the White House would have to get congressional approval for further attacks on Iran. The president blasting Massie as well, essentially saying that he was going to campaign against him. So this is indeed a tactic that the president uses to get what he wants. Move on.
All right, Willie James Inman at the White House for us today. Thank you so much for your reporting.